Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the ECA National Call. We're excited about tonight's call, Elders in Action, Exploring Local Action from our members. I'm Jen Chandler, the Director of Elders Climate Action, and I'm thrilled to be the host tonight. For those of you who are new to Elders Climate Action, we are grandparents, great uncles, great aunts, and everyday folks who are determined to do all we can to leave a livable planet for future generations and all life. Our programs, communications, and chapters are focused on engaging elders and building political will needed to solve the climate crisis. At ECA, we are elder-centered and volunteer-driven, seeking to inform, inspire, and engage older generations to take action on the climate crisis at the local, state, and federal levels. And we're always looking for more volunteers to join our national leadership committees and help plan things like tonight's call. So reach out if you'd like to learn more, and we'll drop some links in the chat. Thank you, Ariana, for dropping those links. About this call tonight, this will be an hour-long presentation with a small panel of speakers, and will be followed by a Q&A session. So please feel free to add any questions you have for our speakers in the Q&A box. If you have any links to share or any technical questions, you can add those to the chat, and we'll make sure that the chat is available for you to use. We will follow the national call with a quick 15-minute action party beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern or 5 p.m. Pacific for those of you on the West Coast. And that'll be with our partners at the Climate Action Now app. And we hope that you'll stay on for that action party and help us reach our goal of 1,500 actions so far in 2024. Wow. On this Earth Day, or on this, let me correct myself, on this day following Earth Day, we wanted to take a moment to celebrate just a few of the many actions happening by Elders Climate Action chapters and our members across the country. Tonight's examples show a little about what's possible with a little time, energy, coordination with partners, and most importantly, elder power. I'm always inspired when I hear the ways that ECA members are mobilizing for collective action. Since yesterday was Earth Day, and across the country, many communities were focused on the theme of plastics this year. Tell us a little bit about what you did for Earth Day. And tonight, I want to start by uplifting a little bit of the work from our Florida chapter on their focus on plastics. So please feel free, add your what you did for Earth Day in the chat box. And in Florida, our Florida members have been working to really fully understand the impact of the plastics industry driven by the fossil fuels industry. They're specifically looking at the direct ecological, economic, and health impacts on communities in the South and the systems of misinformation that have really truly led to the crisis. They're working to build awareness about plastics pollution and finding ways to bring elder power to the issue, including supporting the Global Plastics Treaty to help address plastics pollution. So tonight, ECA Florida is inviting you to sign the Global Plastics Treaty. We'll drop the link. Ariana dropped the link for us. Thank you, Ariana, in the chat. And then also the Beyond Plastics petition, urging the US government to make a strong commitment to that Global Plastics Treaty. Today, we're joined by a panel of ECA leaders, including Mike Allen from the Oregon chapter. Mike is an activist extraordinaire, hosting more than 240 weekly climate strikes in his town of Florence, Oregon. Mike will tell us more about what impacts the climate strikes and his efforts are having in his city in just a moment. Francis Stewart is also joining us to report on behalf of the Maryland chapter members who recently just joined the Save Juliana versus the United States lawsuit event happening in DC, which was called My Voice, My Rights, Our Future, an effort to get loud outside the White House this last weekend. Dennis Higgins from ECA's Southern California chapter is joining us to discuss a variety of ways that the Southern California chapter is working to support the youth in the Genesis versus EPA lawsuit in California. Seth Evans from Massachusetts chapter will update us on some of the happenings in the Massachusetts chapter. And I'll share a bit about what ECA has been up to here in Arizona. And we'll share some resources that will help you plan or participate in fun community events like the ones you hear about tonight. So let's start with Mike in Oregon. Can you give us a quick 5-minute overview of what you've been up to in Florence?
Well, thank you for this opportunity to speak about my climate activism in Oregon. 10 years ago, my wife Pat and I arrived in Florence on the central Oregon coast after traveling in our RV for over 7 years. I'm going to make this thing go through a process that clicks to the next slide if I can. Let me see, slideshow. New technology, right? There we go. We decided to stay, but unfortunately, we found that many residents were not attuned to the threats of climate change. I learned this the hard way when I approached the city council to encourage them to act on climate change. My appeal went unanswered when I asked the city manager when they would respond to my request. She said they don't have to. I knew an injustice was happening, so inspired by Greta Thunberg, Pat and I began Friday climate strikes in front of City Hall. I also started a petition. We demanded the mayor and city council acknowledge we have a climate crisis. We asked them to work with our county, state, and federal governments, and we asked them to form a task force to develop a comprehensive climate action plan unique to our city. Last Friday, we completed our 240th climate strike after 4.5 years. A lot of our strikes were in the rain and wind. We've done them alone and with tens of people. At the same time, we've circulated our petition. We approached locals and visitors from all over the world. At last count, we added 1,910 signatures. How is this local effort connected to Elders Climate Action? I learned from past successes that we should partner with others outside our community. I searched the internet and came across Dave Friedman, who was conducting ECA Zoom meetings to declare climate emergencies. I asked Dave about ECA National and if they had a chapter in Oregon. There were a few ECA members in Portland that wanted one, but needed someone to take the lead. I helped form our Oregon chapter and became a co-leader with Alain Gauthier. We formed goals that supported the initiatives we had started in Florence and added a new goal to establish intergenerational collaboration with our youth. How does this ECA affiliation impact our work in Florence? Following advice of many in Dave's group, I formed a Florence Climate Emergency Campaign. Our primary focus was to get our city to act. But inspired by the intergenerational focus of the ECA chapter, we added a second goal to promote climate education in our schools. Fortunately, I had connections within the Siasala School District as a substitute teacher that allowed me to help some students start an environmental club at the high school. An opportunity to give these students voice came when our local radio station invited me to come to their community conversations program. In addition to one of our elder climate strikers, I asked 2 student leaders from the environmental club to join me. They showed their passion for protecting the environment and outlined plans to start a composting project at the high school. But have we reached our goal of getting our city to act on climate change? I would say yes, but only partially. Our new mayor invited me to get to know each other meeting. I told him I was a liaison to Lane County's climate action plan and then alerted him to a new staff person they hired to seek funds from the Inflation Reduction Act. 6 months later, the city joined the county to access EPA funds that would upgrade our senior center as a resilience hub. This past week, we co-sponsored an Earth Day viewing of the film Plastic Wars with the Episcopal Church. About 20 people attended, and you could notice we had a dog. And participated in the global climate strike last Friday, with the folks from Fridays for Future being the global sponsor. The strike had participants from ages 20 to mid-80s, and I count myself in that latter group. Being part of the ECA chapter has opened the door to many other collaborations. The most long-lasting affiliations are with Third Act Oregon, Electrify Oregon, and Divest Oregon. Our newest and potentially most impactful collaboration is with the Oregon Citizens for an Environmental Rights Amendment. That'll keep us busy for the next 2 years. When I reflect on my climate activism, I find it is like Don Quixote tilting at windmills. You may never reach your goal, but the journey produces a lot of successes along the way. I rely on serendipity and knowing how to take advantage of the situation. This only works if you put yourself out there. I have another mantra, and that is persist, persist. Lastly, I follow the charge from John Lewis. Get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. But that is another story for another time. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much for all the good trouble that y'all are getting up to there in Florence, Oregon. It's so refreshing to see all that you're doing and to see the ways that it's over time is making more and more of an impact in your city and in the conversations happening there in Florence, Oregon. So thank you for all of your outstanding work. I'm going to turn it over now to Francis, who I just saw pictures of this weekend out in front of the White House. And so, Francis, can you give us a 5-minute summary on what was happening and why you felt compelled to be in DC?
Yep. Well, thanks, Jen. One of the nice things about being in the Maryland chapter is we have a lot of opportunities. We do a lot of our work at the state and local level, but we have great opportunities when something comes up at the federal level because we're practically in DC. On a nice day, I can walk into the district, and we can partner with our friends in DC and in Virginia and really have a voice in things that happen at the federal level. And that's something that we did on Saturday, leading up to Earth Day. Sunday. Many of you are familiar with the Juliana case. Technically, Juliana versus United States, more often referred to as Youth v. Gov. The Juliana case was filed 9 years ago, suing the United States for violation of the constitutional rights of the 21 Juliana plaintiffs and basically of all children and youth. The 21 Juliana plaintiffs come from across the United States. At the time they filed suit, they were ages 8 to 18. And they have persevered through all of this. They persevered through the opposition, not only of the Trump administration, which you would kind of predict, but unfortunately also the Obama administration and the Biden administration. And they had gotten to the point where it looked like they were actually going to go to trial. They were going to be able to make their voices heard in federal court, to bring their experts, to get all of that on the court's record, when yet again, the Department of Justice came in with a writ of mandamus. Now, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an expert on these things, but people who are tell me that this is pretty close to unprecedented, that the Juliana case has been hit with this writ of mandamus more than any other case in the United States. So we're looking for ways to try to get past this blockage. So one of the ways is to move public opinion and hopefully then to move the administration to get President Biden and Attorney General Garland to say, okay, let's go to trial. Let's let the courts decide what they decide and we'll go from there. One thing in that direction is to get the story out. So last weekend, they brought a number of plaintiffs to DC. On Saturday, they had a concert. I didn't go to the concert, but I'm sure it was, quite an exciting time. I did go to the rally on Sunday with a number of my ECA colleagues. We brought the banner and stood with the Juliana plaintiffs and other plaintiffs in the case, other young people, and with the Rocking Chair Rebellion folks from Third Act, to tell President Biden the youth need to be heard, that we need to save Juliana. It was really an impressive rally in some ways. We didn't have as many people as I would have liked. People had probably all kinds of things going on a beautiful April weekend. We had probably 50 to 100 folks there other than the plaintiffs and the speakers. We had quite a bit of people from that category. We had 5 of the plaintiffs from the Juliana case. We had plaintiffs from Held versus Montana. You all may be familiar with that case. It was the first rights-based climate change case to ever go to trial. They went to trial in Montana earlier this year, and they won. Now, there are still appeals to be dealt with, but that was really a precedent-setting case in many ways. We also had young people from the case in Virginia and young people from the Genesis B versus EPA case in California that you're going to be hearing more about. And so we had many people there in person. We also were live streamed on Facebook and Instagram. Give people who couldn't be in DC an opportunity to really be a part of things there. And the youth plaintiffs were very impressive. Hopefully some of you may have seen the live stream or will go back and look at the recording just to see what was said. So I don't think I can really do justice to how these young people put together their experience and what needs to happen and the basis for it. And it was very much an intergenerational event. There were a number of children, little children, like preschool to grade school, up through middle school there. There were also, adults of all ages there. People from Elvis Climate Action, people from Third Act, people from other groups, people who affiliation I have no idea about. But we all came together, to support these youth plaintiffs and support their work, which is, really inspirational. And if you, there are other ways to support, even if you weren't able to be there or able to be on the live stream on Sunday. You can go to the Our Children's Trust site. Our Children's Trust is the organization that provides all of the legal work, which is an immense challenge for these cases, to let the government know we want this case to be heard and to facilitate that, and to also learn about the other cases beyond Juliana. But as the plaintiffs in each of the other cases said, Juliana broke ground. Without the Juliana case, Held versus Montana, the Virginia case, the Hawaii case, the Genesis B versus EPA cases probably would never have happened, or at least would not have had that boost. So it was a very important case, and we really want it to be heard. One thing that was powerful is a lot of these young people were wearing gags during the event, that they were being silenced, not being allowed to present their case in federal court. So no matter what happens to that case, we need their voices to be heard. And I hope if you haven't had the chance to weigh in on it yet, that you'll do that soon. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Francis, for that really important update on such an important action. And I got to tell you, the image that I saw, and I'll make sure that all of you get to see it. While I'll share it in the recording with the call tomorrow. But the image of the ECA banner alongside the Juliana plaintiffs in front of the White House with the gags over their face it moved me to tears. It was a very powerful and a very moving image to see. So it's the whole sort of visual of that that action. They really did a great job of make it. It was very powerful to see. I dropped a few links in the chat box for folks. So learn more about Juliana versus US at the first link, and then join the action to save Juliana on the second link. Contact Department of Justice, contact Biden administration, and ask them to make sure that this case gets heard. Let's move on. Thank you again to all ECA members that showed up and represented ECA in DC. So thank you everyone who was there. Let's turn to Dennis, who's going to talk a little bit about how Southern California chapter is working on Genesis versus EPA. So let's turn to Dennis.
Okay, hello. This is Dennis from Southern California. Those were terrific presentations. Mine will not be as lengthy, partially because we kind of are just getting going on this. I'm going to put a link in the chat, much like the other link. This is where you can find information about the lawsuit going on, which is called Genesis versus EPA, and it is also being represented by Our Children's Trust. This is a situation where some young plaintiffs, some young environmentalists, 18 children from across the state of California, have filed a new federal constitutional climate lawsuit against the U.S. EPA. The young plaintiffs assert the EPA intentionally allows life-threatening climate pollution to be emitted by the fossil fuel sources, harming children's welfare, and they claim the EPA has discriminated against them as children by discounting the economic value of their lives and their future, and they seek a judgment that the EPA has violated their constitutional rights. So the case has progressed. I mean, it's kind of amazing that this case is even being heard, but this case has progressed to the point that it will have a hearing in the federal court on Monday, next Monday, April 29th at 10 a.m. And what we are doing is we are attempting to recruit people to show up at this to support these young plaintiffs. And we have gone out to our membership here in Southern California, along with a number of other groups, including 350, Third Act, Climate Reality Corps, Extinction Rebellion. Some of those we've heard back from, some of them we haven't. We will continue to pursue them. But the idea being to generate some attention and support for these plaintiffs by having people outside the courtroom cheering them on, and also even inside the courtroom where we are hoping to impress upon the jurists, I guess, the judge, that there are a lot of people who are supporting these young Californians in the fight for their constitutional rights. And what else can I tell you? For anyone who's interested, there is a phone call, a Zoom call, which is about it's titled a Youth-Powered Climate Justice Workshop, and I'm told that's going to be on Sunday, and that will be I believe, a logistics call to go over what will go on in regard to that hearing on Monday. So that's where we are as far as that goes. I do want to say that ECA is very SoCal is very active, as are other groups, in trying to work with youth. we had a presence at the youth climate strike at City Hall in LA this past Friday. And we're trying to work with our younger brethren, and there you go. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Dennis, for that update. Please share a link for anybody who might be interested in that call you mentioned. If you can drop that in the chat, and we'll make sure that that also gets included. And then also, if you can share with us the location for that hearing that's happening on April 29th. We'll make sure that that all gets included in the follow-up email that goes out tomorrow with the recording of this call. And I'm going to next turn it over. We're going to cross across the country over to Massachusetts chapter. And Seth is going to talk to us about some of the work that Massachusetts has been doing so far in 2024.
I want to thank you, and thank you to Mike and Dennis and Francis for their inspiring stories. I'm going to talk about something which maybe isn't as dramatic, but is really important, and is something that we in Massachusetts have spent quite a bit of time, invested quite a bit of energy developing. And that is our legislative work. But I'm going to say a few things about the chapter first. We were the first ECA local chapter. We have accumulated over our 8 years a mailing list of about 1,500 people, with about 300 or 400 people on our activist list. And out of those, I'd say maybe about 50 or 60 at any one time are truly active. We have a shared leadership model. I serve on the leadership team. And a team structure. In addition to leadership, there's a legislative team, research team, communications team, education team, membership team, and action team. Hang on a second. Okay. That's a picture of me at an action. We participated in the 32123 day at the bank action, but we do all these other things. But the legislative advocacy is work that is something that we've really become noted for. It's our hallmark, our main calling card. We've developed over the years a great set of relationships, both with other organizations that are involved with advocacy. We do a lot of our work in coalition, but also with many of the key legislators that are pushing for climate change within the state legislature, as well as in the agency heads and administrators as part of the Healy administration, especially, which is very dedicated to advancing climate change as well. We also do a lot of educational work in terms of, for example, today we had a expert series presentation on carbon sequestration. We have a monthly deep dialogue, and we are always bringing speakers such as legislators to our monthly chapter meetings as a way of both introducing our membership to the issues, but also really building those relationships so that we can know that we have their ear when we approach them about certain asks. We had a very successful lobby day about 2 months ago, a little less than 2 months ago, where about 30 of us were at the State House. It was the first time that we'd done a lobby day since the pandemic. And there are a few key legislators that we met with. We are in the process of working to get priority bills passed. These are bills that we identified at the beginning of the 2-year legislative session. We are out of about 350, there are a dozen or so that we really got behind, and those are now in the process of being consolidated, reported out of committee, and they'll probably all show up in an omnibus bill, which we had a lot of influence in shaping. The issues that we're focused on right now are siting and permitting, especially this is an especially contentious issue because of EJ concerns and trying to balance the urgency with the need for environmental justice. So we are also advocating for a future clean heat bill, transportation bill, which would involve electrifying the state fleets as well as regional mass transit. There's several bills related to modernizing the grid and to municipal reforestation that we've also worked very hard on. So this is a very, very time-intensive process. First, trying to identify bills, encourage bills to be introduced. Sometimes we're involved in writing the bills. We have people on our legislative team that are lawyers and have experience with this kind of thing, and then getting them through committees onto the floor and advocating for their passage and through the amendment process. We're heading into the home stretch now, and a lot of our members are very skilled at, very knowledgeable and are involved in testifying about these bills at the State House. We're in Massachusetts here. It's a blue state, as people know, but it's also a fairly small state. And Boston is where the State House is, where the area where most of our members are. So we have the advantage of being able to go in and actually meet with our legislators and lobby, which is not something that can be done in every state, I'm aware. So there's so much to focus on when you make a commitment to doing legislative work. First, we are involved with all the issues that we want to see. We have issue groups, including natural solutions and energy and buildings and budget and transportation. There's also once bills get passed, they need to get implemented. So it's really a lot of work just to stay involved with the agencies and the commissions and the administration's plans and their ongoing progress in terms of the statewide climate plan. So it's not just a matter of getting bills passed, but it's a matter of making sure they're implemented. I mentioned the coalitions that we're involved with. There are some of the issues that we are involved with where we're taking a backseat, and there are others where we're really one of the main partners. But we are always trying to work in coalition whenever we can. And obviously all the relationships that need to be established. This is just a snapshot of and is only part of a spreadsheet, and I don't want to dwell on it. There's nothing in this that no particular lines here that I want you to read, but just to show you, give you an idea of the kind of attention to detail, and these are all color coded and has to do with where they are in the legislative cycle. And we have people that are tracking all of these bills and are getting, preparing testimony and keeping the rest of the membership informed about this. So we just want to again say that this is a huge amount of work. We are I couldn't be prouder of the work that our legislative team has done in building these relationships and really becoming a trusted voice and trusted partner, not just for other climate groups, but especially for many of the key legislators that are really taking our advice on a lot of these things and looking to us for guidance. We are truly the elders in the room in many of these conversations, and it's a privilege to be part of a group that's accomplished that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Seth, for all of that Massachusetts is doing and all of the organization that you all do to really make sure that that you're up to speed on everything happening across Massachusetts. So we really appreciate all the efforts that you and your team are putting into this work. And I think I'm going to actually kind of follow on a little bit of what you were talking about and talk a little bit about Arizona's work here, which has also been very focused on relationship building legislatively, but looking at really building relationships with federal level targets. Particularly Senator Kelly's office. Senator Kelly is going to be critical in making sure that all of the solutions for pollutions, critical standards that we've been working on in places like the EPA, he's going to be a critical voice in making sure those things are protected moving through Congress. And so we really have been focusing on establishing strong relationships with his office as part of the work happening here in Arizona. And Hazel was actually going to join us tonight, but she's at a very important EPA meeting this evening. So I am going to do my best to share in her absence. And let me just share screen with y'all. And excellent. So in March, on March 28th, the Arizona chapter worked in conjunction with Sierra Club, Grand Canyon chapter, which is the Arizona chapter of Sierra Club, and Moms Clean Air Force to host what is called a visibility event outside of Senator Mark Kelly's office to really push forward clean air solutions that address air pollution. This visibility event was hosted out in front of Mark Kelly's office. We had about 17 volunteers that joined us to hold signs and get honks of support at the intersection outside of his office. And we held a short press conference in front of the office. So there were 4 speakers, myself, Hazel Chandler, who's in the red shirt in this picture, who is a founding member of Elders Climate Action. She also is the Arizona chapter leader and also wears a hat working with Moms Clean Air Force. She's kind of climate activist extraordinaire here in Arizona. She was one of our speakers. Gabrielle Lawrence, who is holding the Clean Air for All sign in this picture, was one of our speakers, and she is a psychologist that works mostly with children. She's also an ECA and a Moms Clean Air Force chapter member. And then we also were joined by Anna Gorla from Sierra Club as one of our speakers. The real focus of this event was, again, to call on Senator Kelly to support and defend strong standards on air pollution, including those recently released and those expected from the EPA actually in this next week, including the carbon emissions from power plants to standards, and then also to specifically ask Senator Kelly to form a climate advisory team here in Arizona to help guide his policy stances on climate solutions for the state of Arizona. We started with this really great visibility event, as you can see from some of these pictures. It was a really fun event. And we, ahead of the event, we had sent media advisories. We had also contacted Senator Kelly's office and requested a meeting with Senator Kelly. It was actually while he was on recess here in the state of Arizona. He was back home, but he was not available. We were trying to schedule with one of his staffers, and they were on vacation. And so we weren't able ahead of time to coordinate that meeting. But at the end of our event, once we were all done with our press conference, we decided to go up to Senator Kelly's office and drop off some materials, some talking points, and some of our asks. And when we did that, when we dropped off those materials, the woman who we were trying to schedule a meeting with, and I'm blanking on her name, Taylor Reynolds, who is his Central Arizona director happened to be in the office, and she had just come back from an event and had a half hour clear in her schedule. So she invited us all in to the office, and we met with her for a half hour, had a really fabulous conversation with her about all of these EPA standards, about Senator Kelly's stance on air pollution and protections here for the state of Arizona, and then also about inquiring into this climate advisory group. And she was actually very she was very optimistic in the potential for that climate advisory group, which was a great conversation. So overall, it was a really successful event. We had great participation by ECA members in Arizona, and all in all, a very simple event to pull together. It did not take a whole lot of effort and energy on our part to pull this event together. It really sort of shows the power of just a small group of people getting together and in a location. It was really fun to get honks and cheers from people as they drove by doing this visibility event. And actually my highlight of the whole day was when the Phoenix City Metro bus driver in the Phoenix City Metro bus drove past and was cheering and honking the city bus horn at us. So that was a really exciting moment of just sort of cheering us on out there. And we've put some of this information together in a toolkit, which I'm going to share here in just a short minute. Now I'd like to open it up to Q&A from our audience. So if anybody has any burning questions for our panelists, please enter those questions into the Q&A box. And I'll give you a few minutes to get started on entering those questions. And actually, I will stop share and I will share that resource that I was just telling you about, which is this toolkit for hosting an event. It's sort of a starter guide, a checklist of information that can help you if you are trying to share an event. Ariana, you're faster than me. Thank you. If you are wanting to host some sort of event in your community and you just don't know even like what to do or how to do it, this checklist might be helpful as a starting point. It's also a helpful checklist for things like digital events. There's a section at the bottom of it for digital events. The top is more focused on in-person events. It's also a little more focused on things like smaller events where you don't need a permit and you don't need security and porta potties and all of those types of things. Those types of events require a lot of logistics and a lot of details. So thinking about events that, are the types of things that we ourselves can host or our members can host, like these visibility events or like this lobby day or like these climate strikes that Mike was talking about. These are all the types of things that we can, as members of ECA, can put together and host in our own communities. Again, this list isn't exhaustive, and also you don't have to do everything that's on this list for every event. Some of these things are just recommendations. Some of them are just helpful tips. If you're going to do an event, for example, last weekend was Earth Day. Many of us tabled at Earth Day events. It's good to look at this list before you head out to table to remind yourself of the things to bring. The biggest thing I forgot this year was string. So I found myself on the hunt for string. Tape, scissors, string. Those are very important things whenever you table. This checklist has those types of things included, but also has suggestions like media, press advisories, and some of the logistical details you should think about while planning and preparing to host an event. It's also a great toolkit for just helping to amplify events that are happening in your community, giving you some of the tips and tricks to do that. Let's see, I am seeing, and Mike, I see your hand up. Yes.
Well, I see a question that I could direct my answer to. This is from Joanna Welch. She says, I watched Climate Wars a year ago. It was a frontline production for public television. how can we get more people to see this? Oh, and she's in Eureka, California. Well, the way we did it was we participated with our local Episcopal church. She opened the door and suggested that we combine that. And we also have a very good events coordinator type that help suggest that we actually use this because, you know, a lot of people don't recognize the theme of this year's Earth Day is plastics and the planet. So we had a potluck. We invited somebody from the master recycling effort in the county to come and facilitate a follow-up discussion. So that worked very well. We drew about 20 people. And then this person that came from the county loved the idea so well, she's going back to Eugene and is going to do the same thing. So I guess churches might be a good answer for that. And any other vehicle that where you can get people gathered around a TV that you can upload, you know, your link to that particular video because I think you can get it online. It's available.
Congregations, senior centers, community centers, those might be some good places. The biggest thing is to make sure that you have correct permissions for any kind of public viewing of any kind of film. And many documentary films out there, the filmmakers will give permissions for special viewings like this. Let's see. Richard, I see your question, and hi, Richard. Thank you for coming to Earth Day this weekend and all of your action in Arizona. Has there been any follow-up to Senator Kelly's office regarding the meeting, especially the advisory committee? We have been in contact with Taylor and from the Phoenix office and Carmen from the DC office, continuing to push for the advisory committee and also continuing to push on social media for him to establish an advisory committee. And hopefully we're going to be trying to reach out to Senator Kelly's office again here for May recess. And hopefully we'll get a meeting with him in person in May. If not, try to circle back with Taylor again in May and just keep pushing for it. And I do see somebody else ask the question of, has anyone had actual success yet in establishing a climate advisory committee with a legislator, a congressman or senator? And if so, any pointers? You know, that's a really great question. I'll open that question up to everybody else here in this group and see if anybody else is aware of any success stories. I do know that, you know, advisory groups are not uncommon with legislators. I know that Mark Kelly himself has a number of advisory groups, including immigration and veterans and some others. So I know that this isn't an out of the question request to be making. Anybody else have any thoughts on the, Seth, you want to say something about advisory committees or?
Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago, we were part of a coalition that advocated for a very broad and thorough climate bill in Massachusetts called the Roadmap Bill. It was an updating of a previous bill in Massachusetts, but we became very close to the sponsor of the bill and pulled together a lot of groups to strategize with her about how to best move this bill through the legislature. And we have tried to keep that group together. We call it the Roadmap Coalition, and it does meet regularly, and it really has been a help to her to think about other legislation that is needed. And it brought together our closest allies in the climate movement, and the fact that we keep meeting with a couple of these legislators has been a big part of our success. We're so once you get a bill passed or you're talking to somebody about a bill, keep bringing that group together and say, can we get together with you again? And that's it's just the beginning, really, because there's so much work to be done in terms of implementation and follow-up bills. It's endless.
Thank you for that, Seth. And I think, you know, every time that I'm in any sort of legislative meeting and have been in any legislative meetings, it's always a good idea to offer yourself as a resource. So anytime you do meet with a member of Congress or a state representative or a city council member for that matter, offer yourself to be a resource to them or a place where they can ask questions, or offer yourself as a member of their advisory committee. Mike, were you asked to be on some sort of advisory committee for Florence?
Yes, indeed. Because of my involvement with the school, and particularly the school board, and I serve on the superintendent's policy committee, get to know what I represent as a climate activist. So I was asked to be on the newly reformed Facilities Advisory Committee for the school district, with the intent primarily over the next year to work out a plan and engage the community in funding a bond for a whole new high school. And my role is to make sure that it's a very energy efficient building.
And I think, those kinds of advisory committees too are really important. I know my mom here in Arizona, Hazel, has been on the Phoenix Tree and Shade Committee, which is here in Arizona in terms of managing heat is a very important committee in Phoenix. And actually a lot of their solutions are things that also are, solving some of our drawing down carbon emissions issues also. So,
well, one other one that I don't know what they were asking for, but I'm also serving on the Lane County Parks Advisory Committee. And they are the ones that allowed me to be a liaison to the effort that the county had underway to come up with a climate action plan. And those are the kind of interactions that and partnerships and connections that you can make by just being on advisory committees.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much for adding that. I'm going to sort of bring this question to the group, and anybody who wants to answer it, please feel free to chime in here. But what are some of the helpful tips that you might have for others who are wanting to organize in their communities but just aren't quite sure where to start? I think that for some folks that like just doing some of this community organizing stuff can be really intimidating. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on how to make it feel a little less intimidating and easier to get started? And anybody that, if you want to, how about Francis?
I think one thing to find out is who's already working on that. I mean, it may be that you're in a community where no one is doing anything, but in many communities, there are a lot of people doing different things who may or may not be connected with one another. So it may be not supposed to, you're starting a whole new effort as you're joining into an effort and bringing your energy and ideas and resources to that.
And I think that's such a great point, Francis, and it really kind of fits the model of Elders Climate Action in a lot of ways, right? We are really looking at where we can bring the power and the voices of elders into the climate movement. So rather than trying to really bring campaigns from the ground up at ECA, we often are partnering with allies and the larger climate coalitions and the larger movement on actions, and we're sort of customizing those actions to our members, to the voice of our members, but we're not having to create it all by ourselves from scratch. And so I think that's a great model for sort of working in community too, is plugging ourselves into the organizations that are already working on things in our community. I know here in Arizona, we work a lot in partnership. The Arizona chapter has actually formed, part of their chapter's work is forming an Arizona Climate Coalition. So every Friday,
That's great.
there's a whole group of folks that every Friday from all different organizations that are members of various organizations, including Elders Climate Action, all come together on these Friday calls. And that's where they really talk about all the critical things, critical actions, critical happenings here in the state of Arizona. And that was spearheaded by Elders Climate Action and continues to be managed and facilitated. That meeting every Friday is managed and facilitated by ECA. But it's really a place where everybody in the climate movement across the state comes together. So, and again, easy thing to coordinate. It's in that getting started guide. We talk about digital events. This Coalition Call is just a digital event. It's just inviting people to the table once a week to have these conversations. Mike, I see your
Yeah,
hand.
to another answer, we had a question or a comment from Joanna Welch, who talked about being connected and creating a climate action plan through their Humboldt UU fellowship. That's
Mhm.
in Bayside. Well, that's the same thing that's happened here in our Florence area through our local UU group. And I mentioned also that we were collaborating with the Episcopal Church. Churches tend to have based on their faith, a responsibility to be stewards of the earth. I think if you go to them, oftentimes you can find a group. If not, if it's your church, you can maybe start one. But another group is Rotary. They have a very strong international effort underway that is promoting environmentalism and targeting climate. So there are traditional ones you can look for, 350 Us, at local levels, but also if you can't find them in your locale that are local, look for those kinds of opportunities. The churches, service clubs, etc. But then you have to do what I did, and you form one.
Anybody else want to add anything to that part of the conversation? Yeah, I think, places of faith are great places. Anywhere, again, those community centers, I think senior centers,
There you
anywhere
go.
like that are great places for finding other elders. And then in terms of organizations, we partner a lot with a variety of youth organizations, including Sunrise Movement, Zero Hour, Fridays for Future, Change the Chamber, a number of others, and then other close allies that we work a lot with, organizations like Moms Clean Air Force, Mothers Out Front, Mothers and Others for Clean Air, EDF, Sierra Club. Those are some of the really great partners that are out there. If you are looking to get more involved in your community and you don't know where to start, shoot us an email. We'll help put you in contact with some of the other organizations that we know that are in your area, or try to help point you to where you might find some more information. Thank you again to all of you, to Mike, to Seth, to Francis, and to Dennis for sharing all of the great things that are happening across our chapters. We really appreciate your time and your energy and all that you are bringing to the climate movement. And now I'm going to turn it over to Matthew, who's going to get us started with our action party. We hope you all stay on for 15 minutes of action. It doesn't require much from you other than to use the Climate Action Now app on your phone, which Matt will talk about in just a moment. Last month, we took 331 actions in 15 minutes. That puts us at, I think we're somewhere in the range of about 1,200 actions for the year. And I'm hoping that we can break that, or maybe it was 1,300 actions for the year, but hopefully we can break that 1,500 action mark tonight. So get your phones out, and Matt, tell us how we get started.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen. So the way we get started, as we always do, if you've been on one of these action parties before, is by scanning the QR code. So the QR code is this little box on the right-hand side of the screen, and you're going to scan it with your phone camera. So if you take out your phone, open up your camera app, whatever you use to take pictures, and point it right at that little box on the right-hand side of the screen. Don't actually take the picture, don't actually press the button, but just look for a little yellow bubble to pop up that says Climate Action Now as you're pointing your camera at that square. And as soon as it does, click right on that little bubble. It'll take you into the Climate Action Now app to our ECA campaign if you already have the app, and it will take you to the App Store to download if you don't already have the app. And as we get started here and we get people scanning that code, we should see on the left-hand side of the screen, and there we go, we got an action. Hopefully in a moment here, we'll see that ticker ticking up. with a couple actions every couple of seconds. Great, we got 2 more. I love to see it. So keep scanning that QR code, keep getting to the actions. The QR code isn't working for you. Please just drop a message in the chat. Let us know. There are plenty of other ways that we can get you onto the app and get you taking action. So don't let the technical difficulties stop you. We have this link at the bottom, as you can see. If you type this link into your web browser on your phone browser, it will take you to the same series of actions in the app, can.app.link/ECA. So that's another way to do it if the QR code isn't working for you. But it looks like it's working for a lot of folks. We're getting our ticker ticking up, which is great to see. And the actions that we've prepared tonight, since the theme was of the call was sort of just a general update on chapter progress. What we decided to do was just pull together all of the ECA actions that we had in the app and shuffle them up into a campaign. Many of the actions are from our very own Frances Stewart. So a lot of the actions that you'll see were created by her. We also have a number of actions created by Bill Murphy, who's another very prolific and active ECA California person. He's very into methane and short-lived climate pollutants, refrigerants, HFCs. He's very passionate about those as short-term wins that we can, if we can reduce those short-lived climate pollutants, which are much more potent over the near term than CO2, then we can buy ourselves some runway to prevent warming in the near term so that we can get our act together on CO2. So Bill has really taken up the mantle of promoting short-lived climate pollutants in the app and elsewhere as well. So you'll see a number of methane and refrigerant actions in the campaign tonight from Bill. And Frances, among many other things, has been a big advocate of voting, of getting involved in the Environmental Voter Project. So you'll probably see some actions around that from Frances. So yeah, let's keep up the good work. Up to 184 now, which is great. Not sure we'll get to 500 tonight. I may have been a little ambitious, but I'm sure that if we keep going, we'll get to 500 within the next couple of days. So
Well, and some of the actions
Mhm.
tonight I'm noticing take a little longer than some nights. Some of the actions are really fast.
that's
So
true.
a lot of actions going really quick, and some of them take a little bit longer because you got to
Mhm.
go send the email and the things. So
Yep,
I-
certainly.
but it's always nice to see this ticker going up. And I know I just sent a bunch of messages to different corporations.
Mhm.
So it's always fun to see what shows up in the pool here. Sometimes you're sending to it's a variety of decision makers that we're contacting through the app. So sometimes corporations like Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola and Starbucks, who I just contacted today. Sometimes you're contacting members of Congress. Sometimes you're contacting state representatives or governors. So it's really
Mhm.
it's such a helpful, handy tool. And I love that you can take action while you're on a call like this, or while you're watching television, or while you're riding the bus, or waiting in the doctor's office.
Exactly. Yes, everybody has their kind of routine. Tim Guinea, who is one of our biggest supporters, he likes to do it while he makes his coffee in the morning. So if you can find that 5 minutes a day wherever it works best for you in your daily routine, just pick up the app, take 5 or 10 actions, and you can kind of do your part for the planet every day. Makes you feel good, and you'll earn trees in the process. Didn't already know that. Every time you take an action, that little yellow bar on top of your screen will start filling up with green. And when you get all the way to the end, you earn a real tree that is planted in Kenya, I believe, is our new tree planting partner that we have. And they are planting trees with local labor in a protected forest area. So they're really good. It's a great anti-poverty initiative as well as a climate initiative that they're doing there. And every roughly I think 30 actions that you take, you'll earn a tree. So yet another incentive to do good work for the planet, which you guys already are doing and are already motivated to do, which is fantastic. Um, another set of actions that you'll see in the app are from COP28. Um, I think you guys had an ECA call on COP28 recently, right? So you know about some of the things that happened there. But a number of initiatives were announced by the EPA and others around food waste, around methane, um, around power plants. I believe there were a number of things that they announced, but as of at least last time we checked, those announcements didn't actually make it to the docket. So one of the things we're trying to do is to get them to say, hey, it's great that you made this announcement. Now we want to see you actually do it before the new administration, if there is one. Hopefully there isn't, but if they are, they're going to want to dismantle all of that, right? So it's really important that the agencies get their rules in. Francis, when is it? When is the soft deadline for that? Is it the end of May?
To be really sure we're going to do it, it needs to be in early May. So we're
Early
coming.
May. Oh, wow.
Yes.
All right. So we don't have much time at all. Luckily, the agencies have been pretty active. I'm sure many of you saw the rule on electric vehicles that came out recently that they finalized. I guess it's not technically electric vehicles, but it's vehicle emission standards. The result will be many more electric vehicles. So that was a really good thing. There have been a number of other federal agency actions in recent weeks as well. The Bureau of Land Management, I believe, did a couple things to enforce the capping of oil wells and a few other important things like that. EPA has been doing things on PFAS chemicals, which are really bad, on ethylene oxide, which is another really bad chemical that is emitted near fence line communities. The agencies are working overtime to try to get those rules finalized before the Congressional Review Act would be able to undo them if Trump got reelected. So we want to encourage them to keep that up and finalize as many rules as possible within, I guess, the next couple weeks here. I didn't realize it was that tight. You'll see a lot of actions related to that. This week, by the way, the official Earth Day campaign, which is run by earthday.org, which is the organization which I believe is now headed up by Dennis Hayes, who was the original Earth Day demonstrator, one of the original Earth Day demonstrators in 1970. Their theme this year has to do with plastic and planet versus plastic. And they're really putting a big emphasis on the health side of the plastic crisis. That not only is it damaging the environment, it's also damaging our health. Every time we eat out of a plastic container or what have you, or even sometimes just by drinking water that has gotten contaminated with plastic, we get these little microplastics that go into our bodies and accumulate in our organs, and it's all very kind of the research isn't quite it's just starting to come out on what microplastics actually do in your body, and none of it is good. So if you go just into the regular app, into the recommended carousel, after this call, you'll see a number of actions on plastic for Earth Week. And yeah, and if you're new to the app, the kind of idea is just to collect as many as many good climate actions as possible into one place. We pull from a variety of different organizations, obviously including ECA, as well as the Climate Reality Project. We were there at their training in New York City a few weekends ago. We kind of we're hoping to be sort of like a grand central station for all the good climate actions that need to be taken from different groups, from different issues in the climate movement. Oh, of course, Marianne Krasny, another wonderful ECA member, has done a lot of work on the Farm Bill. So you'll also see lots of actions for the Farm Bill in the app if you continue to use it. Keeps getting pushed back. It seems like it was going to be a 2023 bill originally. Now it's a 2024 bill. Hopefully they'll get that figured out by this summer. But in the meantime, we're going to keep letting them know that we want much of that Farm Bill funding as possible to go to climate smart agriculture rather than just propping up the big cash crops, which is often what happens.
And I think, one of the things that I hear a lot, or I get asked a lot, is do these actions, when we take these actions,
Yes.
sign these petitions, when we send these messages, when we make these phone calls, does it matter? And I think the answer to that question is, we know that the answer is yes. And we know that because of things like the rules that we're seeing finalized by the EPA. It was all of our activism. It was all of the comments that were submitted by ECA members and all of the climate allies out there submitting comments on things like light duty vehicles and heavy duty vehicles, which Matthew was just referencing, or some of the rules that we're anticipating coming out next week on carbon pollution from power plants, and mercury and air toxic standards. So these are places where we have been encouraging ECA members to bring our voices to, and we are seeing the power of the voices in the outcomes that we're seeing in those in those standards. We also hear it directly from both the Biden administration and members of Congress that are saying we wouldn't be able to do these things. We wouldn't be able to take this bold action, and we wouldn't be able to make these moves if it wasn't for the advocacy that's happening out there to support it. So the more that decision makers hear from us, the more brave and bold they can be in their legislative action. So it's really up to us to build that political will and really help allow them to be brave. And then we also need to acknowledge that the successes when they happen, and applaud them and continue to push for more, right? I think we all know that there's not going to be a one pen stroke that solves this crisis, it's going to be a slew of action and activity that happens over the next decade and longer. That really is what helps us tackle this issue. And so it's sort of, we got to get as much done now, but we also need a long-term plan also, right? It's a long game here that we're in. So
Yeah, absolutely is. And to your point, Jen, about giving policymakers the will to act, I think, one thing that a lot of people struggle with is, okay, are we really going to change anybody's minds? I think that is, changing people's minds is hard, but often the thing is, a lot of these people want to act. They want to do the right thing. The EPA wants to protect the environment, but what they need is kind of air cover a lot of the time.
Right.
They need an excuse to go to their higher ups and say, hey, I got, hundreds of emails about this. We really need to do something, and that I think is almost the even more important dynamic of advocacy that we can influence, is to give good people, people who do want to make a difference, ammunition to be able to actually do it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. And let's see what our total looks like. We're at 352 actions.
Yeah, that's farther than I thought. We did well.
What we started at tonight? I know we had
started at less than 100, I think. So gotten at least 250 actions on the board today.
Fabulous. Well, 250 actions in 15 minutes. That's 250 more decision makers that heard from us today. So thank you, everybody, for joining us and for sending those actions. And we'll see you next time.